So we've talked about the bottom part here, the male piece. We'll have the bolt on it. Now we're going to talk about the female portion here, where we have a piece of stock that's 1/8 of an inch thick. It's 1 inch wide and 3 inches long. Okay. We have a larger hole cut in the center, a 5/16 hole. It allows us to be able to braze a nut on top of that and have plenty of large hole down below that. If we're not perfectly lined up, it's still going to suit what we need to do. And on the side here, we're going to have an additional hole that's tapped to that 1/4-20 threading. So we'll have two places where the set screw can go into, illustrating that we could do it straight into a 1/8 inch piece where we only have 1/8 worth of threading, or onto a 1/4-20 nut, which gives us a little bit more depth in the threading that we have there, and a little bit more stability and strength in the hold. So I've gone ahead now and I have cut a piece of the 1/8 inch, 1 inch wide stock here from the larger piece. These are back at the same place where the 3/8 by 3/8 square stock was for the last piece that we talked about. I cut this in advance because I've already talked about the hacksaw with you, so it's not something that we can bring up at this point. I do want you to go back and deburr this again with the belt sander. Remember, we're always keeping it flat at an angle on the belt sander, but so it's sitting on the table flat and not tilting up at an angle in either direction, which can cause, if it's up, a corner could actually cut the belt that's on the sander there, which would be make some of that belt fly off and perhaps hit you. So we do it on the side, sitting on the table, on the edges to get those burrs off. All right. So I want to lay out where these holes are going to go. So the first one I'm going to lay out is going to be that center hole there, which is going to be done with a 5/16 bit. So laying this out looks like this. We have a 3 inch long piece. So I'm going to set my scale. So I'm covering up my 1 1/2. And then I want to see if I am at the center here. So I'm going to hold that scale up to it. And with my Sharpie, I'm going to mark across like that. And I'll come the other direction and do the exact same line. And since by coming in from both directions, I'm on the same line there, that means that that's dead center. Now it's 1 inch this way. So half of 1 inch is a 1/2 inch. So instead of being at 1 1/2 now, I'm going to set it so I'm just covering up that 1/2 inch mark. Then I'll come from this side, draw a line, come from this side, and draw a line. So what we have are crosshairs that identify dead center on this piece of material. Okay. So a little bit different than working with wood and drilling with wood. We want to have some kind of a center punch there, something that's going to give us a little indentation so that our bit is going to stay centered on that piece and drill where we want it to be, where we want it to be. So in the cabinet here, I have on the left side here 4 center punches. They are different than this. This is a nail set. This is not what we're going to be using in metal shop class. These over here, the center punches, have the point on them, and that is going to be used with a hammer. We're going to go right to that center point there and make a small indentation. So I'm going to line that up with my center point there and give it a tap. So what you see is just a little indentation there where those crosshairs were, and that's going to allow my drill bit to sit nicely in there. One thing that I also want to say, that when you do cut your 3 inches, you have the option of having it in here like this, and you have the option of having it in here like this. Either one's fine. For me, it's easier to cut a square line 90 degrees from the edge that's like this, because I can see the whole angle there. Sometimes when you have it like this, your saw is going to veer off and give you an angle there, which you'll have to go back and correct in the belt sander. So I would hold it like this, and I would also make it so that the line I'm cutting is very close to the jaws of the chuck. If I bring it out here and I try to cut right here, I have so much extended out past the jaws of the chuck here that's it will have some vibration there. It'll make it more difficult for me to cut. Okay. So now that I'm going to be drilling this hole, I'm going to set this in here. I'm going to clamp it. Ultimately, I'm going to have a 5/16 hole going through this. With metalworking, we center punch, and we also start off with a bit that's much smaller. So I'm going to do 5/16 with 3 different bits.